You know, if you look at like Einstein, even, or Tesla, you know, they would say, you know, I didn't make some of these breakthroughs based on book knowledge. I moved into a whole field of intuitive intelligence. And that's what I see these kids coming in with. You know, they know what you're doing, and they shouldn't know what you're doing. They know what you're feeling. They have an own inner regulatory system of what they need.
All right, guys, got Bonni here in Las Vegas. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're not out here often, right?
No. Actually, I don't think I've been back for like 20 years.
Holy crap.
It's cool to come back and see the developments.
That's a lot of development.
Yeah.
20 years.
Didn't
wow.
recognize it.
Yeah, because you're in Arkansas, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in Tennessee now. So I have a retreat center in Arkansas. But like, it's like a time warp coming back here. It's so different.
Yeah, I bet.
All of it.
So you're by Nashville?
Yeah.
I like Nashville. I went there for the first time last year.
You did. You did. What'd you think?
I like it. Southern hospitality.
Southern hospitality. You get really kind of connected to that. You know, when I was driving from Vegas, I drove with my kids and with my brother. He'd already moved out there. And we get to that, like the border, you know, into Tennessee. And all of a sudden people would be just out mowing their grass and they'd be waving. I'm like, do you know them? And he's like, no, they do that out here. Just smile and wave. And it's cool.
Yeah, you don't get that in cities.
No, not so much. You just got to look at the ground and clutch your purse.
I like that community aspect, though. It makes you feel like you're part of something.
It does.
You know,
it does.
In city, you're kind of like on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really, I think I took that for granted coming back. I was like, oh, that's right. You know, everybody is kind of in their own little life shell doing their own thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You go on any ghost hunts out there?
In Tennessee?
Yeah.
Lots.
Yeah? There's a lot of ghosts out there?
Lots. You have the like the Confederate, or you have the Confederate soldiers. You have all of that took place in Franklin, Tennessee. You have a lot of stuff going on. Native American. I don't do it so much anymore, but back in the day, it was fascinating.
Yeah. Native Americans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history there, right?
Yeah, Trail of Tears. Yeah, a lot of that.
What were you seeing when you went to those sites with the Native Americans?
Man, I've done so many. You know what is interesting about the Native American sites is they seem to be doing. They seem to be connected to the land or the community, or you get to almost like look at time unfolding, like as if you were watching it, like watching a screen, seeing like maybe energetic imprints or getting feelings or sensations of what took place before, you know, you lived there. So it was different. As opposed to some of the more modern areas or war, it was a little bit more interactive.
Interesting.
But I've seen so much.
Yeah.
It's a cool place.
Yeah, because the natives were very spiritual, right? So there's probably a lot of energy from that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like I think certain people, if you're sensitive, can just pick up on like the energetic marks of what's present in the land. Some things are so powerful, they stay.
Yeah. They say Vegas is pretty haunted.
It is. I think it is. I think it is. It's like, it feels like it just completely, the energy turns the opposite direction than Tennessee. So it's like,
Yeah. Well, I've heard two things about it. Well, first of all, there's a lot of deaths like on the Strip.
Yeah.
A lot of suicides and I think like 2,000 a year or something.
For sure.
So all the hotels are haunted. And then I also heard the hotels block off energy. So the psychics can't win when they're gambling.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Actually, I've really heard like it wasn't like that back in the day.
Probably not. And then they became aware. They're like, wait, why is this person winning?
Yeah. And they really watch you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's when I grew up here years ago, I was just inundated with all of the stuff. A lot of the stuff that was like lower or people that were suffering or had passed away. And as years have progressed and I've learned to work with this kind of ability or energy, I don't sense that as much. It's like you find a way to hover above it.
Interesting.
So I think it's like a survival skill.
It's like I heard it's like a frequency thing too, right?
Yeah, it is.
A lot of them operate at a lower frequency.
Yeah.
So if you're not even tapped into that, you won't notice them.
Exactly. It's the law of energy, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of on the bandwidth you're on, which is why, you know, fear or, you know, just this kind of dystopian attitude. People are like, I don't know why I'm so unhappy. I'm like, it's the bandwidth, man. Like it's just drawing to you all levels and frequencies that are adhering to that which you're putting out. So
do you think it's true like certain substances like alcohol can lower your frequency?
I think so. I think so because in my experience, when you see people with, you know, alcohol use often, it's because they're in pain, right? Like they're trying to get at something. They don't really know how. It's kind of nebulous. And You don't have all your resources and faculties intact to deal with it. So yeah, it does seem like they just attract different energetic patterns. It's really sad. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I've seen it too with family and friends.
Yeah.
And same with certain prescription drugs.
For sure.
I've seen that for sure with people.
Yeah, I lived through that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, antipsychotics, right?
Yeah. And, you know, being a really happy-go-lucky human, but we know when they put me on the antipsychotics, not knowing, you know, why I'm so different or divergent, you know, trying to help me, it just put me on a path of confusion. I didn't have the faculties. It was just so much of the unknown. And fear got in. And once fear monopolizes your system in that way, we're seeing that a lot right now. Your perception of all that is around you is skewed. So I think everything's always present. It's just where our perceivers and our energetic parameters are set.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of fear right now with potential attacks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
All over social media. It's kind of scary because you don't want to like focus on it all day. But at the same time, it's in the back of your head.
Right. I think, you know, I try to stay on the flip side or like the radical optimistic side just for all the reasons, you know, we just said. And it's this kind of amazing balance of not putting your head in the sand and pretending that all is fine and not capsizing into this dystopian, hopeless arena for Earth or for communities or for families or relationships. Like it's kind of finding that equanimity in it. But I think there's so many people on the planet that are showing up as divergent, as free thinkers, all this ingenuity, especially in the kids, you know, that they're not really wired the same way. So I think that that's a really interesting, hopeful pointer for where we are. Old paradigm is not working anymore.
Right.
We reached like the glass ceiling of science, spirituality, philosophy, social structure. And we're all seeing that kind of pattern and paradigm just break away. And it's intense if you don't have a foundation or an idea of why it's happening.
Yeah. Would you say part of that's because of the Age of Aquarius coming in?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, even the Mayans predicted this, you know, back at the end of the long calendar, that we're going to live in a time beyond time. And, you know, what does that mean? We may not know. They said we're going to move into a cosmic center. What does that mean? You know, we're all, you know, just kind of trying to grab the fruit and understand this. But, you know, even our ancestors, many different sectors and divisions talked about this time being unprecedented, changing. And, you know, even though the earth is changing and fluxing and we don't fully understand it, I think it's more the people. I think if we need to focus on how to kind of align and have a lifestyle to surf this, Aquarian age. What does that mean and how do we survive?
Yeah, it's definitely a new era, right, of thinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, the autism rates are crazy.
It is. I just want to redefine and really look into what does that mean?
Yeah.
I think technically the way, you know, I came into this world was very divergent.
Right.
You know, my systems did not process like anybody else's. And I'm seeing it all over the place. And I trust nature. You know, I trust, I think there's a divinity, a pattern, an intelligence that runs even through chaos. And so if you look at like the fluxes that are happening in nature or the humans or the movements that are coming up, you can really start to see and predict, you know, how we're going to grow and what's the emphasis of our timeline. And I think it is a lot these neurodivergent kids and these, the free thinkers.
Are they here, you think, to kind of like inspire everyone else?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also like I love the concept of like the Mandelbrot theory with fractals, where it turned mathematics on its head. You know, in, you know, old paradigm geometry, you had straight lines and circles and triangles. And that's what we built empires with. And, you know, with the Mandelbrot fractal movement, you started to really observe nature and its intelligence. And nothing kind of makes sense from the level of observation if you expect things to fit in these like straight lines and these boxes or these perfect spheres. You get stumped. But these kids are understanding this kind of fractal-like intelligence, which is infinite, and this multi-dimensional awareness and thinking style that I think we really need to pay attention to. I think that's our evolution. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like the ancients used that type of technology, right? With the pyramids and everything.
Yeah, they did. it's like circling back around. We're remembering. Yeah.
History repeats itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On
Yeah, I
all
remember we were
levels.
taught growing up, like, we are the smartest of all time.
Yeah.
Like, but it possibly isn't true, right?
I think you're carrying the seed of evolution, especially the younger generations. Like, there's seeds in all of us, right? But this capacity to kind of work and think beyond an ego, just to kind of move into observation and presence and collaboration. But yeah, I think that's where our focus needs to be. You know, I think it's about asking the right questions and having powerful intentions.
Absolutely.
To
Where are you
rebuild.
on the whole AI debacle? Are you excited, worried, or both?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. People ask me these questions and my instinct is like, everything is going to be beautiful and fine. Obviously, it comes with complications. It's shattering old paradigms and usages. But I think as a whole, ultimately, it's adding to this teaching and this lesson to think outside the box. So I think I err on the side of it could be very useful.
Interesting.
I think we're putting a lot of emphasis on it right now because it's so new,
Yeah.
and unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I know a lot of people in the spiritual community are pretty, I don't know, scared or like worried about it, I guess.
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah. Well, I trust the earth. I trust nature. I trust patterns and frequencies. And if you just observe and look at things that are occurring naturally. Now, that's an odd word to use, naturally occurring, for something that really represents that is not organic.
Right.
But it's here and it's moving through people and it's not stopping. And so if you just stop and be present with it and go, interesting. I'm sure people felt the same way about ending slavery, and about building airplanes. There were certain sectors of societies that couldn't fathom a different way of being. So I think it's new. Actually, I think we've been using it a lot more than we realize, but I think that the advanced science is not necessarily out to get us, so to speak.
Yeah, it's been around. If you talk to people in the AI space, it's been around way longer than people think.
Yeah, it's just the fear that enters in our communities going, uh-oh,
Right.
we're going to be overtaken. But power of perspective, man. Yeah.
Power, perspective, facts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear-based things in the world.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. To me, this is the war on fear. And fear even itself has its place. But we need to create space and not lose balance and capsize into it because, like I said earlier, even from my background, it skews everything. And you can't see the entire situation. The Buddhists have this aphorism or this story that I love, and it's pretty much surmises where we are. And it talks about like these 4 or 5 Buddhist monks blindfolded, and they all had their hand on a different part of an elephant. And they'd never seen an elephant before in this story, and they were asked to describe what is an elephant. And one monk, described the tail as, spindly and thin, and that's an elephant. Another monk described the trunk as being this, really worm-like feature, and so on. Some described the feet. And nobody was correct because they were only seeing parts and pieces of the elephant. And I think that's what's happening right now is we're learning to kind of step back to see from higher perspective, what is the entire situation?
Yeah.
Instead of these more localized views. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, we got to unite, right?
Yeah. We're all a piece of the puzzle, all of us.
I love that. Yeah. I remember growing up, the fear stuff was, because I used to watch the news every day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And just seeing the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war, I lived on a fear mindset.
Yeah.
Man,
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was controlling almost.
It was. And your family was upset, and you're in your community and you're looking around going, okay, I better catch up and be upset because if you're not, you're unempathetic.
Right.
And you're not taking it seriously. So I think now we're reevaluating what really makes a difference, where we can really be helpful. But yeah, you're right. I remember that. That was a really powerful
Tough times. Yeah, I had family in the war. Every day I would turn on the news and see if their name was on the list.
Oh, man.
Yeah. As a kid,
man.
that's like,
That's your entry into this
traumatizing
world.
for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You know what that brings to mind, Sean? It's in many different cultures and sectors, people that came into the tribe that were seen as free thinkers or maybe healers, they were often put through a lot of like tests. In the Egyptian times, they called it this initiation or the adepts. to really be exposed to really, really hard, fearful things, to be really in a place of contraction so that they can work their way through that and sustain in even fields of light and expansion.
Wow.
So it's an interesting new look at, maybe fear, in certain doses as we're growing up or having these experiences, it too has a purpose of teaching us how to contract and expand. Problem is when we get stuck in one layer of that, we don't ever go through that expansion.
Yeah, get stuck in a loop.
So yeah. So I think we've been kind of trained on how to be agile, actually.
I agree, though, because a lot of successful people go through some major trauma.
Right.
Almost all of them.
Almost all of them. That's the stories I hear. Yeah. Those that have come up with like really, really forward-thinking ideas.
It's very rare where it'll be passed down to the kid and they'll just continue it. Like it happens, but it's not as common as someone that went through some trauma, came from nothing.
Yeah. They have both sides of the paradigm of the polarity system. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So I'm already like thinking about my kids, like, what are they going to go through? Because they can't have an easy life, or else it's going to be,
Right. I'm hearing a lot of like young girls go, I'm not bringing kids into this. It's an interesting perspective. Yeah, we're seeing kids that are coming in that are kind of really equipped. You know, they're kind of dialed in, and as the frequencies, change around us. I mean, that's just science. We're moving closer to an Andromedan system. We have all of these different changes in the solar system. We're electrical beings. We live in an electrical planet, and we're just sensing, all these different shifts. And I think the key is how to live a lifestyle to stay in alignment, and how to utilize kind of this intuitive intelligence, not just for ourselves, but to support each other, and then mostly these kids. Like, how are we going to show up for them if they already have the new hardware? How are we going to?
They have a microchip in their brain.
Right. We're like, oh.
Yeah, what are we going to teach them?
Yeah, what are we going to teach them?
Yeah, I had Billy Carson?
Yeah.
I had him on yesterday, and he was saying kids will be able to download books without reading them in their head.
It's interesting. I'm kind of getting the same vibe, right? And I think, I don't know, so many different thoughts and beliefs on that. But I think that they're just feeling the upper tier of this kind of ether network. If you look at like Einstein, even, or Tesla, they would say, I didn't make some of these breakthroughs based on book knowledge. I moved into a whole field of intuitive intelligence. And that's what I see these kids coming in with. They know what you're doing, and they shouldn't know what you're doing. They know what you're feeling. They have an own inner regulatory system of what they need, even though it's against what we've been taught. You should do this, lights out at 9, go to bed, you should go into public school or private school. They just seem to have access to the spectrum of intelligence, which is, I think, the key of our timeline.
I agree. When you look at those top scientists from back in the day, they had a side of spirituality to them that doesn't get talked about.
Yes, yeah. Or it's an expansive science that we just can't understand. So to me, there's definitely a spiritual component to this, obviously. There's a mystical quality, but really what it is just patterns, frequencies, and waves. And the kind of, if you look at this like kind of a horizontal, a vertical system, or the higher that you get into the more refined systems of nature, these higher sentient beings are present there. This higher intelligence or ways to rebuild Earth is all in this kind of upper deck of archives. And so that's available for anybody.
Right.
But what I think is so different is that certain people are doing the work or fertilizing their consciousness or their brain in such a way that puts them into a space where they can just go up and get there. Just like those, masterful scientists.
I think they can channel a little better than the average person.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Just channeling.
Billy was saying this. It messed me up, actually. He said there's no original thoughts. His theory was like some people are just like better at like obtaining the information.
I think it's a magneticism or a kind of a field where, it's like if you it's the law of attraction, right? Like when you put a certain signal out, certain things come back to that. So I think there's a theory and a philosophy that might be tried and true that as you learn to live a lifestyle or inhabit an intuitive intelligence, you pick up on that signal. I think the problem, Sean, is that as you move into, especially the beginning of intuitive intelligence, it's so rogue against what you experience. Like you feel everything. You sense things that don't necessarily have the box that comes along with it.
Right.
You are almost instantly different than your family or your friends. And so there's this strange kind of ripping from an old, belief system into a new. And I think that's what shuts people down, just this transition. But again, to me, although it's mystical, it's an algorithm, it's a pattern, it's the framework of the ether system that the indigenous people knew, that our ancestors knew, that these great, brilliant scientists tapped into. But it's there for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people when they're kids, they have these abilities and then something weird happens and they kind of shut it off.
Yeah.
Hear that all the time.
Usually because they're kind of kicked out of the social ring. That'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably had a lot of like trouble making friends back then, right?
Yeah, I did. And it for whatever reason, it was okay. I think because I had such a rich other life, that was definitely considered just high level of imagination, and then fractures in my neurosystem. But I didn't really need the same things from people. I think because I did have that rich,
interesting,
altered state lifestyle. So
yeah.
You can get lost in that too. So it's balance. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, these days kids are just getting bullied everywhere.
Yeah,
on social media
for sure.
too. Like at least back then with us, you got home and the bullying stopped.
Yeah, right.
Now it's like they get back, they go on TikTok and there's a video about them.
There. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah.
But I guess this is their initiation.
Yeah.
I think things are at critical mass. And again, we're breaking out of a system and people are angry. And I find most people actually aren't in touch with why they're really angry. And so they have all of these righteous ideas, and not to discount them, really good ideas, really good points about social structures that are broken.
Yeah.
But if you track anger down to its root system, it's always going to be fear. And so again, it's that fear issue of being afraid. And I think we need to really, really, really go within and sense what is it that we're so afraid of.
For sure.
And we'll start to make some true
I love that so much because a lot of people take anger, when someone's angry at them, they take it personally.
Yeah.
But it's not really they're angry at you.
No. And now everything's polarizing itself. I think we're at this kind of critical mass of polarity. So you can look at somebody in the grocery store and find yourself going, I don't know why they're that way. Or, we're just finding this way that we're countering anything that's outside of us. Again, if you look at nature or trust that there is an intelligence, even in fields of chaos, step back and go, why is that happening? There's a lot of polarization going on. If you take out the human limitations or the emotions, you start to enter into some different frameworks. That's very fascinating. I think that if you pull back something and it hits some kind of critical point, that critical mass or tension, all it has left to do is break free and propel itself forward. And I think that's what's scaring people because it's
I love that.
A lot of energy. Yeah.
I had that. That was probably my worst habit, that judgmental mindset growing up.
Yeah.
I would judge everyone just because they were different from me.
Protection.
Yeah. But it stunts your growth so much when you think that way.
It does. That's the key. The thing that I get the most right now, as we stand here, I often hear non-judgment, non-binary thinking, non-dualistic thinking, which is we judge everything from somebody pulling out in front of us really quickly. So it's kind of that constant repetition of, let it be as it is.
Right.
Because, every life form is whole. There's the sinner and there's the saint. Everything in nature has a whole system. It's a complete system. But depending on where we tune in to any given system, it feeds back our capacity to perceive. So when you're seeing people who are like, this is just going up in a blazing mess, totally understandable. Fear's tricky. I had my season of working through fear. I still do.
Right.
But you put yourself in that resistance, to protect yourself from pain. But if you just step back and really lean into the laws of nature, it starts to answer a lot of these questions. And like you said, Sean, it doesn't become as personal anymore, which, boy, that gives you some oxygen really quickly.
Yeah. I used to have crippling anxiety, but that mindset shift for me
changed everything for you.
Like not having the victim mentality.
Right.
Like life happens for you, right?
100%. Well, I guess that depends on your belief system. So what I tell people is that you can be of like team A mindset where everything has an intelligence, an animating force within it, whatever you want to call that, God or the universe, and that everything has a purpose and a precision point for its unfolding, which is hard to wrap your human brain around that, but that's one school of thought. Or like team B, it's entropy. It's Murphy's Law. Better watch your back because somebody's probably...
Karma.
Karma. It's all going down. The interesting thing is you can't really play both sides effectively. Like, it's really doesn't make sense at the end of the day. Like some things are divine and some things aren't. If you're talking about divine intelligence, it's divine intelligence without maybe flaw. That's kind of what it means. Or if you're looking at, you really need to watch your back and, even take up for yourself because nobody else is looking out for you. That's a different school of thought. But then how do you explain miracles and interventions and things? So hopefully most people will move into this theory that there is a divine intelligence. And again, if you can kind of rest into all things matter and it's okay not to know why.
Yeah.
You create that space. Once you create space, you can move up that vertical pole, like I was saying, and start to enter into some of those frequencies and bandwidths that have higher intelligence.
Yeah. That makes sense because a lot of people are logical and evidence-based, right?
Yeah, which we need those people too, right? Yeah,
the scientists and scholars, academics.
Yeah,
I think they're needed. I just think there's that gap though with the spiritual community.
Yeah, I think there always has been.
Yeah. Do you think it'll ever get to the point where they'll agree?
I think so. I think that is I think this is the age of Aquarius, right? So really this is the stripping away. I think all of us would agree, if you've watched any news or media, or if you're just feeling your feelings, that there is something off. There's something needs to change. And I think that's really what the earth pushes. It's just that simple. Change is coming. And we're moving from a closed system that has lines and squares and triangles. Because, that stuff gets in when you're a kid. You're told this is how it goes. And you don't really go back and rethink it necessarily until crisis happens.
Yeah.
Or there's, a really, grief-stricken moment where you have to just reassess. But I think that the purging and the changing at large is going to, by way of peace or chaos for some, is going to push us into a place where we can collaborate and start to be intuitive with our ideas going forward.
Absolutely. Do you think they should teach more of this stuff to kids, children?
I do. And, if you do some research with, the beginning of the century with like the Theosophical movement or the Anthroposophical or Rudolf Steiner in some of the ways that we educate kids on a very high level sensory base, touching, feeling, integrating with nature, we had all that information, we still do. But I think, again, especially since COVID, right, there's all this confusion. But I think these kids are going to demand that we get back to a system of organics and connection. And so my vote and hopes on them.
I hope so too. My favorite field trip as a kid, I grew up in Jersey. We went to the woods for the weekend.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that says a lot.
Stayed in cabins.
You got it.
Yeah. That was the most I've learned in a while.
Oh my gosh, that says a lot. Yeah. Right. I agree. I think also we're assuming our place is at a certain location in the world of nature. Where are we in the food chain? Looking at that and playing around with, what is sentient life and what does it have to teach us? I mean, I've been reading a lot about mushrooms, not psychedelics, just good old fashioned wood mushrooms. And there's crazy facts. Like, for instance, don't quote me on this, but there's something around mushroom growth is radically stimulated when there is an increased lightning strikes.
Really?
And you're like, okay, that's interesting.
Huh.
The mycelium network, we still don't fully understand that and how it's coded or networking or speaking to the trees. And so I think if we take a step back and go into field trips in the woods and just create that space for kids or ourselves, our natural memory or rhythm or constitution will always try to reach for higher ground. So, there you go. We could just start hanging out in the woods.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
I love me some mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah, we were talking out there about how certain animals are actually really intelligent.
Really intelligent.
And you were saying chickens.
Yeah. I've learned, people are like, where do you get your teachings? Who is your mentor? And I'm like, if I'm being perfectly honest, the chickens, the trees, my dogs, because there is an intelligence there. As per the work I do, I've seen a lot of people in transition points, even from life into death. And one of the most incredible things I have ever seen in my life was the transitioning of my little dog, my little Chihuahua. And I was in the right headspace, I guess, or the right moment to see the energy actually lift out of that form.
Whoa.
Yeah, you would think I would see this a lot, but I really haven't over the years. And it was this indescribable color. I guess you could, some hybrid of gold and yellow rose out of this little dog's body. And for a split second, I could identify it as my dog. And I mean, literally a split second. And after that, it was just a level of consciousness that didn't hold gender or form or species or anything. It was just, evidential intelligence that the universe has that's just coming out of this little body. And I'm like, whoa. So I know it sounds crazy, but maybe playing with and restructuring what is the highest form of intelligence? What are we seeking? And where do we find it? But chickens are smarter, I think, than people give credit for.
I heard pigs are smart too.
Pigs are smart. Yeah. I mean, nature knows how to cope.
Yeah. I had to give up bacon because I used to love bacon, but I've seen videos of pigs and they're so smart.
They're so smart.
Yeah. I just feel like the quality of the meat you're consuming matters a lot.
And that's what I think I turned vegetarian almost 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Because not for the reasons I maybe should have, like this, rights of animals. I wasn't really that keyed into that at the time, but somebody shared with me that energy never dies, and that when animals are kept in these, terrible containers or the way that they're processed, that energy stays with them, and that is something that you consume and become part of. That was her theory, but it was enough for me to be like, whoa.
Yeah, I could see it though.
Yeah.
Aubrey Marcus talks about this a lot, how he consumes meat, but he has to hunt it himself. Absolutely, or he has to get it from ethically sourced places.
Right. And what the indigenous people knew, I think it's about the power of your intention.
Yeah.
And it's about co-creation with all forms of nature. And, as that comes out of my mouth, it's so evident that that's all we need to focus on, and everything else will find its natural rhythm. Tesla believed that, that all nature is seeking rhythm, and we're a part of that big time.
Yeah.
And so we just need to find where we belong.
Yeah. Tesla was so ahead of his time.
So ahead of his time. But Tesla, at the very end, he couldn't really hold it.
Right.
So I think, again, it's this really interesting journey into high intelligence, and it's this expansion, but you got to know when to contract and ground down and pull back and just be with your family and your board games and your chickens. And you got to know when to pull it back and just be human. And then go back in. But Tesla was a genius. But, the sad thing is towards the end, he couldn't, he wasn't validated, and he had nobody, and he was lonely, and he started to, kind of snap around the corners. So it's just an interesting lesson. I've
heard some weird conspiracies around his demise, how the Trump family got his documents after. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so I guess it might have been the FBI when he passed away. They took all his documents.
Yeah, that happened when he was alive. People
really?
Stole his patents. Yeah, I forget. For electricity, yeah, absolutely. That seemed to be Tesla's maybe karma. I don't know. It's an interesting point. No, I haven't heard that one, but I think if you look at it from 50,000 feet, you have expansion and you have contraction, and you have to make room for all of it and find your balance and not get caught up. I mean, the conspiracy theories have their place, and it's a word of caution. Some of them are like, okay, let's recheck a system there. But, I think when I really, really started researching all of that years and years ago, I mean, it was my family that, are like, you're not right. Pull out. You have tinfoil curtains. I was like, okay, you're right. Too far in. So it's a slippery slope, man. You gotta stay focused and present. And I think we're all feeling ADD or ADHD, but there are lifestyle skills and intuitive development practices that can put you on your mark. And I think it's key.
Yeah. I think it's so key to have intuition these days.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to be what saves you from AI, from all the fake stuff.
Survival. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been training mine. My fiance has been amazing. So she can take a deck of cards face down and she'll guess 80% of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's I'm only at 20%. That's
I teach
crazy.
people that. And then when I try to do it, I overthink it. I'm like, I'm out. I just know it's possible and you should go for it. But I think that's good you're doing that, because I think it's going to be where we find peace. And balance, and we can actually be of service to our community.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's just such a good skill to have, to be able to see someone and know their intentions without even talking to them.
Yeah, and then not judge them.
Not judge them, but
just be aware of their pain and suffering.
Exactly.
And recognize it and move through it. And you might be the impetus of their healing because they're walking through a sea of people who are just opposing them and judging them. So It may come across, I know, to a lot of people as mystical. And like I said, it is. The higher you get up into this Akashic field or these systems, you start to really interact with high sentient life forms. But it's really nature's plan, its patterns, its vibrations, actually science. And that's, I think, the key. I think, people worry about, if they go too far in the intuitive realm, will they just become kooky? And, there's that imagery of the crystal ball and, and I know that's kind of a paradigm that's shattering too, because I started this work so long ago, and I was in the Bible Belt, and literally people really, they shared with me that it was a very bad idea that our county had just ran off the last psychic, took her to court for witchcraft.
Whoa!
I know, it was it's like such a different timeline.
Yeah.
So starting then and seeing the level of how taboo it was, and really gently trying to absorb that it's pain and fear people are acknowledging. It's not me. It's not it's intuition at large. It's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So gosh, and to look at where we are now, it's like 1 in 3 people are doing intuitive work. Like it feels like it's great.
It's much more accepting now, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I remember back then it was very shunned upon.
Yeah.
Like I was growing up, I was like, that's BS.
That's
like
BS.
Psychics. Like,
yeah. Oh, even I thought it was until I was told, but my options, when they thought I was really out there or broken, I think, even early on, I got to the point at like 12, 13 where they institutionalized me for schizophrenia because there were no other options.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So were you having just visions back then?
I was having visions. I was talking to things that weren't there. In their defense, it does look a little outside of the box.
Yeah.
And, I was too old to be having these imaginary friends and contact. And so, my mom, God love her, just nobody knew what to do with that. And so smattering of doctors, and the end result was that she had, I had schizophrenia or some kind of, offshoot of that. Put me on medication. Well, the medication distorted my life support and my lifestyle. I figured out how to be in this world. And then it just kind of came crashing down, which then and there is the institution. But again, it's that initiation, walking through the dark and finding our path. And ultimately, it was a local therapist that suggested that I wasn't. I was like 20, and she's like, "Oh, you're not schizophrenic." I'm like, "No, I have the documentation. It's been ruled upon." And she was the one that said, "No, it's a psychic ability."
Wow.
I was like, "What does that even mean? Like Sylvia Browne?" It was like nothing to ping that off, and I didn't believe it either. I thought it was not BS, but I didn't think that I could ever be so talented to touch such a thing, and that I wasn't a part of that. And took her a lot of examples and things that she would show me to kind of at least wrap my brain around it. And then I got to this point, well, you can either continue to go into this world of darkness of being broken, or you can investigate that this might be something different. And that's really what I want to help people to do, is that this isn't just a few special people with some gift that nobody understands. It's the human capacity. And of course, some people are aligned with it a little bit more than others, because you have to have the teachers, you have to have the way showers. But it's not unobtainable for anyone. Like you said, I think it is going to be like a survival skill going forward. Yeah.
What a beautiful story. Yeah, that happened to my dad. Put him in a psych ward.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
All this medication.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Was he seeing things?
Yeah, seeing things, and similar story to you.
Yeah, it really begs the point, what is that really, and what's happening to people?
It really makes you wonder, because when I used to think of people in psych wards when I was a kid, I thought they were all crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
But now it's like, wait, some of these people might just...
They might be tapped into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the first level of neurodivergence, that we just, again, we didn't have words or containers, and we're still not there, but my gosh.
Yeah.
And then he had to go through that for you to be maybe you.
100%.
So there is this really cool lineage pattern. I appreciate all of it. I don't, my creed in life is to resist nothing, really. Again, it's not me putting my head in the sand, but just waiting and reserving judgment, because there are so many other levels beyond what we understand. And when you create space, somehow you are in the middle between momentum and inertia at this, some people call it 0 point energy field.
Yeah.
When you're just still, or this is why meditation is so profound and can illuminate the path forward. When you create that space or present or stillness in your life, even in small, doses, because I know it's hard.
Yeah.
You open yourself up to these field lines, these archives. And all you have to do is learn how to listen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Meditation's a game changer, because a lot of answers are within, right?
Absolutely.
There's this idea that you need to look up everything, or ask people for advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, it spawns epiphany, right? Like I do my fair share of research, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I think, again, you just got to find a way not to be too on one side or the other, being up in the clouds and, just staying in communication with higher life forms or ETs or angels, or being somewhere other than here, that's not really what it's about either.
Right.
We're here.
You need that balance.
Yeah, we need that balance.
Yeah. So were you the only one in your family that had these powers?
Well, no, actually. I have, family members that were institutionalized as well. A lot of drug abuse and alcohol. And, I say that with, of course, no judgment, man. They just did not know how to carry this. So I feel like I might have been the first generation. Actually, I definitely am. I think my hope was just more fierce than my fear. And that's really, it's nothing more magical than that. I just had this inevitable heart and love for nature in all forms. But so no, most of my family up until this point, just intense struggles, addiction and institutionalization. But I've turned it around, right? So I have 3 great adult kids that they make room for this. They're not walking around doing what I'm doing, but they've made room, and it seems like it has stopped some kind of imbalance in the family line. Yeah.
Generational curse has ended.
Yes, it has. And again, nobody's fault, just it's a learning curve, yeah.
Yeah, I think each family has their kind of generational trauma, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, mine was like my dad got physically beat up. I'm sure his dad got beat up. That was more normal back then.
Wow, and it probably went back really, really far. Right,
yeah, but he never laid a hand on me, so.
To stop that momentum is like, that's
massive,
amazing.
yeah. And I didn't
like,
realize it till later in life. I had to really think about it because he had a lot of like mental issues from the trauma.
Yeah,
and I never thought about like what's causing that.
Well, good for you holding space for him and seeing his journey. Like, I think these are the true heroes of our time, those that hold back the tsunami of pain. And even under that kind of pressure, still hear that echo of truth or those higher worlds. Like, that's intense.
Yeah, massive respect. He was my height, so he was 6'5", but he was 130 pounds.
Yeah. He literally was in touch with higher
he got
spectrums.
Worked hard on the farm, Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah.
So farm worker. So that's how you grew up.
Yeah.
Kind of immersed in nature too.
Yeah.
Sure.
I do want to start a homestead one day.
Hey, yeah. I hear that a lot. I think it's about like why we get into it. If we get into it because we're running away from a collapsing earth. Yeah. That's probably not ideal.
No, I would do it on the side. I'd go there like 3 months a year just to get away.
I think that's cool.
Relax.
I think that's cool. I think that's where the earth's going. We're all going to be vibing out on our homesteads.
You got these billionaires starting bunkers and
and getting chickens and livestock and I don't know. It kind of brings that reason of really introducing new teachers and new mentorship with listening and interacting with nature in a different way.
Yeah.
We are having this feeling. We're having this inner code of, a lot of us leave the city and go do your own thing. So
absolutely.
It's cool. You grew up on a farm. It's a part of your story.
Yeah. I grew up in the Garden State, Jersey. Yeah. So I kind of took advantage how much I like nature because I was just there. But now when I moved to Vegas, it's like I really miss nature.
Yeah. You can see the contrast.
Yeah. I just measured my chakras the other day. I had no root chakra movement. So really? that was a sign to me that I need to get back out in nature.
That's cool. And that's really cool that you bring it up in that way. Because I think from my experience, you can kind of go recharge like a little crystal, and really take in nature and those ions and those chemicals and that information, that data, and you can survive. It's like holding your breath underwater.
Right.
And you can come back to different lifestyles, but you got to keep, going back. And other cultures know that, I think it's just ours that are trying to figure out what's the highest, framework of logic. But it's cool that you can measure it, recognizing, we got to make some shifts.
Yeah, we got a pendant at home.
That's good. Yeah. I know we've tried it all. I have a copper pyramid that I
love
it. These biomats. I'm like, whatever works, man.
We even looked up, do dogs have chakras? And they do.
They do.
Yeah, they have even more than us.
I was just going to say, from my experience, they're really high intelligent beings. Joke's on us. We may not be at the top of the food chain.
I know, right? Yeah, they got more than us. They got one on their nose and a couple more.
I was just
that we
researching
don't have.
that. Yeah, like when you start to get into that, it's cool. It's wild to see what you can and chakras, these energetic bodies. They do a lot, right? They supply our pranic field, our energy, our physical body, but they're these little magnets. They're these receivers taking in information.
Yep.
And so how far can that go?
Yeah.
If we learn to amplify those energetic bodies, which a lot of cool people are coming to the surface talking about that with, biohacking or with, food and wellness and mindfulness. So I think we're figuring it out.
Yeah. It's super important to be aware of where you're at. I would measure it every couple months at least,
Yeah.
I remember when I started the podcast, my throat chakra was completely closed.
Really?
Yeah. So this helped me open up.
Oh, I bet. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was completely closed, which makes sense because I was very shy growing up.
Right.
Super shy.
Right.
Scared to speak my mind. never raised my hand in class or anything.
Right. You were in this, just a whole different realm of energy for sure. You know what, when you're talking about throat chakra, this is something I've contemplated. You have on the backside of the throat is what we would call the zeal point. And it's kind of like the outlet. And to me, it's like the psychic garbage disposal. So like when you're very sensitive or intuitively inclined, you take in so much information, like sensory overload, which we're seeing a lot again with young generations. Yeah. And if you press and push on that point, that meridian point at the base of the neck, it just kind of creates this reset, right? So you think about the throat, it could just be a point of critical mass, like you can't take any more information in. So makes sense when we start putting stuff out, it creates that room. Yeah.
I've been learning about the lymphatic system too.
Oh yeah.
How you need to get your lymphatic system drained, right?
100%. Yeah.
Oh man.
Trampoline in my bedroom.
Yeah. Because you can get physically sick if it's built up.
Yeah, absolutely. Energetically and physically alike.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I bought that machine that shakes your body.
That shakes your
Have
body.
You seen that?
Yeah. I've done that a couple of times. That's so intense.
It's
I have way
strong.
more fun on a trampoline. Like,
trampoline helps too.
Yeah, but it's so hard to do. Like what this takes. When people hear all this, they're like, I don't have 3 hours to dedicate to like energetic protocol and health. So I think you just have to stay in the flow, like what you're doing, Sean. Like you're feeling, I need to make this shift, and so today I'll honor that.
Right.
I need to get on the jiggly machine. I need to open up my lymphatic system. So I don't think it's about, buying all the equipment and just really stressing out about this either. I think we have this natural rhythm that will pull us to whatever we need if we just learn to listen.
Agreed. Yeah, one step at a time, or else it gets too overwhelming.
And then we just quit and we start back over.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Right.
Bonnie, this has been so fun.
That's great.
Yeah, what are you working on next? Are you having any events or anything this year for people?
We have we have a retreat in Hot Springs over the Crystal Mountains, and so as soon as spring comes, we just like open up camp.
I love it.
And teach and do yoga and talk about like ancient occult science and intuition. So I love working out there. Kind of spring to fall. That's
cool.
That's
I'm gonna definitely come out this year.
Yeah,
I'm
glad.
Document it and stuff. I've never been to Arkansas too.
Never been to Arkansas,
No.
man. People talk about portals and vortexes, and I've been all around. Recently coming back from Japan, which is like radically sacred in so many ways. But Arkansas really takes the cake.
Really? Because I've heard of Sedona. We've been to Sedona once.
Sedona is awesome too, right? Like I guess I'd have to really
neck and neck.
Okay, it's a tie, but it's a different kind of energy. A lot of the indigenous. I know our retreat center is a geodesic dome. So it's this, sphere of sacred geometry, and you're surrounded by nothing but triangles.
Wow.
And it's on these caverns, these crystal ley lines, but it's also on Indian mounds. That's on the historic registry. So you have so many different energetics flowing through that. And
that sounds like beautiful.
Research, man. It's fun.
Yeah, we'll link it below. I can't wait to visit. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Anytime. So cool. So, I'm so lucky. I just get to go play over there. So I just try to stay in the flow, and what calls me. So people, ask, what are you doing next? I'm like, your guess is as mine.
I love it. Living day to day.
Yeah, right.
I love it. We'll link everything below. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really
check her out, guys. Check out the center, and I'll see you next time.